Hi friends, this is Varda Sharma and I have another card making video for you today. As you can see from this image, we are going to make 5 different cards. To begin with, I'm using a normal white cardstock. It's a little thick cardstock, but it can be used for printing, so it's really a normal cardstock. I'm using a very old recollection stamp set that I have. It has many tiny little images. I'm using the leaf image and I'm going to heat emboss it. I have inked it up with VersaFine ink. This is just a clear sticky ink and I'm going over it with Martha Stewart green embossing powder. I'm also collecting the extra ink in a piece of scratch paper. I'm going to scoop it back. I like to use a dry paint brush to go over the areas where there is ink and I don't want it to be. The embossing buddy helps, but sometimes I just mess things up. So I like to keep a dry paint brush handy. Now I'm taking my heat tool to the paper. I have made sure it's nice and hot and I'm going to melt each of these images. As you can see here, I have worked in sections like I was doing before and I've gone over the entire page embossing those green leaves, and I have used my kids' watercolors to go in between and color those leaves. I have also stamped and colored some flowers and some acorns. I have not paid much attention to any shading or anything, but just made sure that there is ink and not just white showing through those images. I thought that yellow was missing from this overall autumn theme, so I decided to add a yellow flower. I'm using a solid flower image from the same stamp set and just using normal distress ink. I think it is wild honey or something. I'll let you know the exact color. My kid also decided to help me, so she came in between and she is stamping a couple of those images. At the end of the session, I have a nice autumn themed pattern paper. For the next two cards, I'm going to use this pattern paper. I've already die cut it using stitch rectangle dies from Sanise stamp. I've used the largest rectangle from that set. And this largest rectangle makes the pattern paper just a little bit smaller than the card base. So I'm going to use that. I have also used the painted hello die that came in October card kit. And I have die cut it 4 times, twice on cardstock and twice I've used foam to make the die cut. I have this colored foam that I purchased from Amazon. I'll link to the exact product. And I'm assembling them so that the cardstock is at the top and the foam is giving it a little bit of lift. Now I'm taking the stitched rectangle pattern paper that I have cut out and layering it on the card to see exactly how I want the layout to be. And I'm going to assemble this card using that hello and the pattern paper. Because I was making several different cards at the same time, I decided to keep similar embellishments. I'm just going to use twine and sequins. That way I don't have to think much about adding different embellishments to different cards. It's going to simplify my process a bit. When I'm doing wrapping of some twine, what I like to do is add a little bit of adhesive. I did try with the glossy accents, but that didn't work for me. So I just went ahead and added a bit of tape runner adhesive to one side of the pattern paper at the back. That will hold my twine in place while I wrap it around. I went around the paper twice. That way I'll have two lines of those twine showing up. Now on the other side, I'm going to apply similarly the same tape adhesive. Again, this is a permanent adhesive. And just for good measure, I like to add a bit of tape. I'm just using normal masking tape. You can use any tape you have in hand. You don't have to worry about it showing up. It's not going to show up. So you can pretty much use whatever you have in hand. And I am trimming the twine, making sure that it's nice and even on the front. Then I'm going to go around the edges of that pattern paper with some double-sided foam adhesive. That way the pattern paper itself will have a little bit of dimension. It will lift up from the card base and it won't lie flat. I'm just going on all 4 sides. I could have added a little bit of adhesive to the center also, but I wasn't adding too much weight on top of it, so I decided to skip it this time. But maybe it's a good idea to have a solid backing for your pattern paper when you're doing this. I'll do it next time. Okay, so now this is adhered. I'm going to use the same glossy accents that works as an adhesive too at the back of my foam, and I'm going to adhere the red hello on top of this pattern paper and just above the twine. And I decided to, I'm sorry, I'm having the Glossy Accents bottle in the middle. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I'm adhering it just above the twine, making sure a part of that O sticks out of the pattern paper and goes onto the card base. I just wanted that look. I had a tiny bit of that Glossy Accent showing on the side, so I just dabbed it with a kitchen towel. Even if it remained there, I don't think I would have been much bothered. It's going to dry clear. And next I'm using a couple sequins, and first, before I start adhering it, I'm going to just lay them out and figure out where I want them to be, and then I'm going to go behind them with the adhesive and stick them to the pattern paper. The sequins that I'm using are from two different sets. One is, I think, the citrus set. um, I don't remember the company, and the second is from, I think, Art Impressions. I'll link to the actual products that I used, so you will know exactly which I used. I decided to go with a red and green theme just to coordinate with the red hello and the green leaves on the pattern paper. I could have used yellow and gold, yellow and blue or gold and blue also, but I decided to keep those two for the other card. So I'm just using a tiny bit of glossy accents at the point where I want those sequins to be and adhering all those sequins. So this is the finished card. I also went over the hello with a little bit of gel gold pen to add a little bit of shimmer, and now I'm going ahead with the third card. Here also I have already die cut with the largest rectangle one piece of that pattern paper. Then I went ahead and slid the rectangle to one side so that out of one rectangle I got two rectangle pieces. This is the advantage of using symmetrical dies. You can move them on either side and have the dimension changed. I did not have dies that match the rectangles that I made, but I was able to do it with whatever dies I had. Just another way to stretch your supplies. Now I'm using my MISTI tool and making sure I line up the pattern paper and the card base exactly how I want it to be. And then I'm going ahead and stamping this scripty "You Have Been on My Mind." This came with the Flowers on My Mind stamp set from the March card kit by Simon Says Stamp. I'm doing this on two different cards. I like to keep a piece of scratch paper to make sure that there is no ink. I just like to stamp on it, make sure there is no ink, and then pick up my stamp, place it where I want, and then close the door, open it, and then ink it. For long greetings like this, I'm not a very good stamper yet, so I don't do a good job of stamping it right the first time. So MISTI tool helps me make sure that even if I mess up, I can go over it one more time and not actually mess the image. It will stamp correctly exactly on the same place even if I stamp it multiple times. Here I'm using the twine again to go behind the rectangle. This particular twine is by Stampin' Up, and this is a little thinner one, so I decided to go around 3 times. Again, I'm using whatever tape I had on hand and going behind it, making sure that it is stuck and it will stay put, it won't move. And I used again double-sided foam adhesive tape to adhere the finished piece to the card base. I also stamped a couple of those acorns and colored them. I used a craft punch I had and created a couple leaves, and I adhered the things together, like two of those leaves and one acorn, and then I decided to add more leaves and more more leaves to the back of this piece, and I created a little embellishment that matched my pattern paper exactly. Then I used a foam square to go behind and stick the little embellishment, and added glossy accents to the top of my acorn to give it a little shiny look. Again, I'm creating one more card with the other piece of rectangle. This time I decided to use a foam square, and I cut it slightly smaller than the rectangle pattern paper that I was stamping. I'm using regular permanent tape rubber adhesive and stamping these two on top of my card base. I'm using similar embellishments what I used for the previous card. This time, instead of punching the leaves out, I decided to stamp and fussy cut the exact same leaves that are on the pattern paper. I colored all three images, and now I'm adhering these three together, making a small embellishment. I'm going to go behind with another piece of the foam square. Since the foam squares are too big, I'm just cutting them up exactly to fit behind the acorn, and I'm going to uh, add this to give a little bit of dimension to that little embellishment what I created and put it next to the sentiment. So that is going to be this focal point for my card. Now I'm going and adding a couple sequins. This time I decided to use two different shades of green, and I had to cut the part of video where I actually laid out the entire card and saw where I wanted everything to be, and then I just went ahead and added everything together. So these are the two cards that we just made with those two rectangle pieces. Okay. This is the final card we are going to make. What I have done is I've taken a black card base, black cardstock card base, and I am lining up the pattern paper and the sentiment that I want exactly as I want it to be. And I made two little pencil lines, one above and one below, diagonally on my pattern paper. Now again I'm using Misty tool to my advantage. This white ink is giving me a little bit of trouble. It doesn't stamp right for me. Maybe I just didn't get the hang of it. But that Misty tool helped me get the stamp exactly where I wanted it to be on the card base. Now what I'm doing is I'm lining up my one edge of the rectangle die with one pencil mark, what I have done, and securing it with a small piece of tape and running it through my Sizzix machine. This way the die will actually cut exactly where I want it to be. I have made sure none of the other part of my paper is going on any of the die's edges, and I'll get a nice fine stitch line. Even though it is diagonal, I'll get the exact fine stitch line even where I'm not using it to be the rectangle shape. Another way to stretch your dies. I'm doing the same thing for the other pencil line we had made, so that way I'm cutting a stitched die cut line above and below the sentiment, as you'll see when I'm assembling this card. And so I have these two different diagonally cut pieces of the pattern paper. I also had a small scrape remain that I've used for some other card. So I'm going behind the two diagonally cut pieces and adding a little bit of foam adhesive, so that way my sentiment will be on the card base flat and my two pattern papers will lie above and below in a slightly raised fashion. So that's going to add the dimension for my card. I'm just going around all the four edges and making sure I'm using double-sided foam adhesive tape. Again, I could have used real foam pieces here, but this tape was so much more convenient, so that's why I just decided to go with that. I'm just going to remove the backing paper and line up the top part with exactly where I want it to be. I'm just placing the scissor to hold down this card. It was, for some reason, it was just not getting folded completely. Okay, so I'm going to line up the top piece, making sure it is exactly where I want it to be. And now for the bottom piece, I'm going to make sure I line the edges of this with the edges of the top paper. That way they look like it was one continuous piece, and then the sentiment pushed them away at the diagonal angle. So that's the kind of look I'm going for. This card will not have any twine. I'm just going to add a few sequins. This time I decided to go with the blue and the gold, and that finished the card. This was the fifth card, so even if I spent about 10 minutes making that pattern paper, I think it was well worth it. It gave me all these 5 cards. I hope you found a way to use your smaller images, and I hope you got inspired with this. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and also to my blog. Thank you so much for staying with me so far. Bye bye. See you next time.